It was supposed to be a routine gas stop, just a man. A quiet man, filling up before a long drive home. But to them, he was just a target, a lonely black man. Grey hair, worn boots. To them, he looked like prey. What they didn't know was, they just crossed a man who trained warriors, a veteran, a father. A survivor. Elijah Rawlins was 62, retired U.S. Marine, 2 decades in the military. He had lived through Baghdad bombings and backdoor jungle raids, but the battle that weighed the heaviest on him was the one he kept fighting back home. The battle of being seen as less, as dangerous, as disposable. He lived alone in a small town in Georgia, kept to himself, mowed his lawn, drank his coffee black. Every Sunday, he'd visit his wife's grave with lilies and hum an old Sam Cooke tune. This day, though, it wasn't Sunday. It was a Wednesday, and he almost didn't come home. They called themselves the Steel Hounds. Locals knew him. Cops ignored him. White boys who felt the world owed them something. And anytime they saw someone who didn't fit in, they made them pay. One of them, Brett, spotted Elijah at the pump. Brett laughing loud. "Hey, look here. Looks like Morgan Freeman just rolled in from church." The others snicker. Elijah didn't flinch. Didn't even turn his head. He'd heard worse from drill sergeants, from his own country, but silence sometimes makes cowards bold, and Brett wasn't done. "Brett, you deaf, old man? Or just disrespectful?" He steps closer. Better show some manners when spoken to. Elijah had two choices, engage or endure. But as the other 2 bikers surrounded him, he knew this wasn't about words. This was a setup, a show. 3 men hunting pride. Elijah low, composed. "Back off. You don't want what's in me to come out," biker 2 said. "Ooh." Old men's got bark. They didn't hear the tone. They didn't recognize the warning in his stillness. They saw a slow black man with grey hair, not the soldier who disarmed IEDs with his bare hands. Not the father who once saved 2 kids from a burning Humvee. And then Brett spit right on Elijah's boots. For Elijah Rawlins, that spit wasn't just saliva. It was every insult he swallowed. Every door slammed in his face. Every time he was called boy in uniform. Every check he couldn't cash despite serving this country. And just like that something broke, he moved like a whisper through wind. In one motion, he parried Brett's swing, twisted his arm behind his back, and sent him face first into the pavement. Biker 3 said, "Hey." What though? Elijah ducked low, sweeping the second biker's legs out beneath him. The last one hesitated. He looked into Elijah's eyes and saw it. The soldier wasn't gone. He just had rules. And now, the rules had changed. Police sirens blared in the distance. Brett whimpered. The other 2 staggered. Elijah, he stood still. Didn't run, didn't speak. Just waited. Because men like him, they don't fear justice. They fear the lack of it. If this story makes your chest tight, if you've ever felt unseen, unprotected, unappreciated, drop a comment below. Share this. Let Elijah's story echo. And hit that subscribe button. Because more stories like his deserve to be told. At the station, Elijah was processed. No apology, no handshake, just cold stares. They ran his record, saw honorably discharged, saw medals, awards, commendations, and yet he was held overnight, officer said. "We'll sort this in the morning, in that cell." Elijah whispered to himself, still fighting. Even now, the next morning, something unexpected happened. A white woman, lawyer, walked into the precinct pro bono. Her name was Catherine Dawson, daughter of a Vietnam vet. She saw the footage on social media, saw the bruises, heard the truth in Elijah's silence. She didn't ask for a fee. She asked for justice. Catherine said, "This man doesn't belong in here. The real question is, why haven't the bikers been arrested?" The video went viral, 2 million views in 48 hours. People rallied behind Elijah, but that's when things took a dark turn. Brett filed a counterclaim, claimed elder abuse, said he was the victim, and the sheriff was Brett's cousin. Elijah was out, but not free. Court date set, charges pending, reputation bruised, and in a town where the law slept in the same bed as the lawless, his biggest battle was just beginning. And this time, no training manual could prepare him. Elijah taught us this: sometimes the greatest act of resistance is not backing down. Sometimes survival means standing alone, and sometimes being feared isn't a curse. It's the only shield they let us carry. But this story ain't done. The Steel Hounds, they've got friends, connections, the Dars, office, and Elijah, he just got served with new charges. Intent to incite violence. What will happen in court? Can Catherine protect him from a rigged system? Will the truth be enough to win? Last we saw Elijah Rawlins. He had already survived one assault by a biker gang and by a system that didn't want him to win. He stood his ground. He didn't run. And yet, the county dar hit him with a new charge: intent to incite violence. It didn't make sense. He was the one attacked. There were witnesses. There was video. So why was the state doubling down? Elijah was sitting in his one-bedroom apartment the next morning when Catherine Dawson, his pro bono lawyer, called him. Her voice was tense. "Catherine, Elijah, we need to meet. Now." "You're not safe." He thought she meant the charges, but what she showed him next changed everything. They met in her office. Catherine had pulled a grainy security tape one she'd subpoenaed from a nearby hardware store, not the gas station. The footage was dated 1 week before the attack. 3 men the same bikers were seen in the back room of a local bar, talking to someone in uniform. A sheriff, the same one who arrested Elijah. This wasn't random. This was orchestrated. Brett the lead biker was related to Sheriff Haldeman, and Brett had just lost a lawsuit over a bar fight involving a black bartender. He blamed the culture war. He said someone had to be taught a lesson. Catherine whispering, "You were the lesson." That night, Elijah's windows were shuttered. Someone left a note under his windshield: "Next time, we won't miss." He didn't call 911. Because he already knew who'd show up. Instead, he called Catherine, and Catherine made her boldest move yet. She filed a civil suit against the sheriff's department, public corruption, malicious prosecution, and conspiracy to commit assault, and just like that, the county courthouse caught fire. Not literally, but metaphorically. Everything exploded. Then came the twist no one expected. A young black deputy named Terrence Brooks sent Catherine an anonymous message. "I got bodycam from the arrest. Sheriff told us to delete it." "I didn't." That footage, it showed the sheriff laughing after cuffing Elijah, Sheriff Haldeman, on tape. Bet he'll think twice before pumping gas next to white folks again. Catherine leaked the bodycam footage to the press. The internet did the rest. Hashtags flooded TikTok. Justice F. Religious Stand with Veterans exposes Thessalon's news anchors picked up the story. Talk shows invited Catherine. Black veterans from all over the country shared their own stories. But with fame came danger. Elijah woke up to smoke. His living room was on fire. He grabbed his military medals, a photo of his wife, and ran barefoot into the street. The fire department arrived too late. The fire marshal said it was arson. The same symbol from the biker gang to hounds, and a skull was spray painted on the sidewalk. They tried to burn him out, but Elijah, he'd survived worse flames. The moment the fire was ruled arson, the case hit federal interest. The FBI quietly opened a case. Hate crime, conspiracy, obstruction. They didn't trust local law enforcement, and they had reason not to. Elijah and Catherine were placed in temporary protective housing. But then, something broke the case wide open. Deputy Brooks agreed to testify in front of a grand jury. Deputy Terence Brooks had dropped a truth bomb too big to ignore. A red zone list, a directive to target Elijah, and most damning of all, proof that justice in that town had been nothing but a performance. But before the grand jury could act fully, he vanished, 3 days missing. No texts, no phone calls, not a single trace. Catherine to Elijah, we may not see him again, but we will make sure his voice still speaks. And now, all eyes turned back to the courthouse, back to Elijah Rawlins, the veteran who did nothing but survive and was being put on trial for it. Elijah stood, not in uniform, not in chains, but in quiet defiance. Catherine final remarks to jury. You don't have to wonder who Elijah is. You've seen the video. You've heard the threats. You know what he's endured. Now ask yourself this. If he were your father, your uncle, your neighbor, would he be sitting in that chair? The prosecutor said nothing in response because they couldn't argue with the truth anymore. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Inside the courtroom, silence buzzed. Like tension in a war zone, Catherine sat forward, her hand on her case file. Elijah, he stared at a crack in the ceiling tile. 1 inch to focus on, just like in battle. 1 inch to breathe. The buzzer rang. The jury was back. The courtroom filled. Cameras clicked. Reporters whispered. The judge opened the slip. The judge began reading. In the case of the state of Georgia vs. Elijah Rawlins, on the charge of intent to incite violence, we find the defendant not guilty. Cheers erupted. People outside the courthouse screamed. TikTok live streams hit 1 million views within an hour. Hashtags flooded. Elijah history stand with veterans in dread zones. Catherine wiped tears. Elijah didn't move. Not right away. Just closed his eyes. Like a soldier letting go of the last breath of war. Reporters swarmed him. Cameras begged for sound bites, but Elijah said just 5 words. I still don't feel safe. Because the war wasn't over. The town hadn't changed overnight. And the Steel Hounds, they weren't done either. The FBI had made arrests, but Sheriff Haldeman was still missing. And someone had begun tampering with witnesses. A clerk from the courthouse was found beaten in his driveway. A juror got an anonymous text. You freed him. We won't forget. The FBI placed multiple people under protection, including Elijah and Catherine. Then came a break. One of the biker gang members, Ronnie Stitch Albers, got arrested on an unrelated weapons charge in Alabama. During interrogation, he broke. Ronnie, I'll talk. But I want federal protection. FBI agent, what do you have? Ronnie, I know where the sheriff is and who's hiding him. Ronnie's testimony. Sheriff Haldeman was holed up at a private ranch near the Georgia-Tennessee border. It belonged to a former militia leader, one with a deep hatred for the federal government. Haldeman had support from rogue deputies, from old militia members, and their goal? To restart the Red Zone project in other counties. But underground, this wasn't just local corruption anymore. This was domestic terror. FBI SWAT launched a raid. Helicopters circled. Officers moved in, and inside the ranch, they found Sheriff Haldeman unarmed, sitting at a table, eating steak. Sheriff Haldeman to agents. Took you long enough. He was arrested on conspiracy to commit hate crimes, obstruction of justice, attempted witness intimidation, domestic terrorism related activities, and yet even cuffed, even cornered, he smirked. Sheriff Haldeman to cameras. Let's see if your little vet still feels safe now. Elijah watched the news report. Didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. Elijah to Catherine. Men like him, they don't die easy. They spread. She nodded. But she had something else to show him. A letter, mailed anonymously. Inside, Terence Brooks's badge, along with a note. I'm alive. But I had to run, keep fighting. They won't silence me forever. It gave Elijah hope, not closure, not peace, but enough to keep breathing, enough to keep fighting. 3 months later, Elijah walked on stage to a standing ovation. The crowd was full of black veterans, mothers, widows, young men in uniforms, old men with canes. They'd seen the story, and now they saw the man. Elijah began his speech. "I fought overseas, but I didn't expect the longest war to be right here, at home. They tried to silence me, tried to burn me, but all they did was light a fire in others." Applause, cheers, tears. Catherine introduced legislation named the Rawlins Act that would make it illegal for local departments to keep unmonitored lists like the red zones. The bill gained traction in Congress. Veterans lobbied, citizens rallied, but still, some counties pushed back. Some politicians stayed quiet because rooting out injustice isn't popular when it wears a badge. 1 year later, Elijah returned to the same gas station. Different boots, same man this time. A new sheriff's patrol car parked outside. Young black deputy stood near the door, badge on, chest, head held high. He nodded at Elijah. Elijah nodded back. No words exchanged, but the message was clear. We see you now. Some fights don't end with verdicts. They end with legacies. Elijah Rawlins didn't ask to be a symbol. He just wanted peace. But sometimes peace requires war, and now the warrior sleeps, but the world is wide awake. If Elijah's story shook you, don't stay silent. Share this video. Tag someone who needs to hear it. Comment brave in the comments if you are standing with Elijah. Part 2 is coming. Make sure you're subscribed, because in the fight for dignity, the quietest men often roar the loudest.